Hi everyone, and thanks for watching. This video is going to be all about my ECV and breech baby experience. I filmed a couple of videos on my pregnancy experiences. I've been pregnant twice, and in my second pregnancy I had a breech baby. And it seems like everyone is really interested in the part specifically about having a breech baby and having the ECV procedure. So in this video I'm going to be talking specifically about having a breech baby, all of the things that I tried in order to turn the baby, including the ECV procedure, and I will go into detail on how that happened and what the outcome was. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Basically, I found out that my baby was breech during my third trimester. During one of my appointments, the doctor felt my uterus to try and figure out the position of the baby. She wasn't 100% sure that the baby was head down, so she sent me for an ultrasound just to confirm. I went for the ultrasound a couple of days later. They confirmed that the baby was in fact breech. The baby had its head up and it had one leg extended down and the other one kind of bent upwards. So I'm not sure what the correct terminology is for that configuration. I know that breech babies have a bunch of different positions that they could be in, and that was the position that she was in. So somewhere between 35 and 37 weeks is when I found out that the baby was breech. I went to see my doctor and she gave me the options for what you can do when you have a breech baby. So basically I could try and deliver the baby in a breech position. There are some doctors that will do that. Not all doctors will. Some of them are not trained in delivering breech babies, but she said that that would be an option for me, so I imagine that there are doctors at the hospital that I was delivering at. The other option was to try the ECV procedure. This is a procedure where an OB will try and rotate the baby from the outside of your body to get the baby into a head down position. And the last option would be to have a C-section, a cesarean section, in which they would obviously make an incision and take the baby out if they were still in a breech position by the time you were supposed to deliver. Those were the three options presented by the doctor. And so as far as delivering the baby breech, I was not really comfortable with that as an option that I wanted to try. I felt like I'm kind of a smaller individual. You know, it was really tough delivering the first baby in a normal head down position. I was worried that delivering the second baby, even if she was going to be the same size, that in a weird presentation might just be really difficult for my body, because pushing and everything works in a specific way where, you know, you've got the head that's kind of leading the way, and so you can easily push that down. I wasn't sure how pushing would work with the legs coming down first. You know, would my body know how to squeeze in a way that everything was, you know, that the baby's legs would come out properly? I wasn't really sure about that. I just didn't feel comfortable in delivering the baby in a breech position, so I kind of eliminated that as being an option for me. As far as the ECV position, I was 100% on board with trying that. I felt like that seemed very non-invasive. I did read up subsequently, and the doctor even told me when she presented it as an option that it was potentially a very painful procedure, that a lot of people didn't go through with it once they felt how it would feel to move the baby. If it was very painful, they sometimes would opt out of it and stop at that point. Nonetheless, I still felt like I wanted to go ahead and try that. Obviously, there was a risk of something going wrong and then needing to perform an emergency C-section, but I felt like a C-section was one of the other options that were remaining, and since I had decided against delivering a breech baby, that I might end up having to have a C-section anyway if they were not able to turn the baby. So basically I wanted to try the ECV, and if I was not able to turn the baby, then I was going to go ahead and choose to have a C-section. So on top of that, my doctor also recommended or suggested that I try some alternative methods to turn the baby. And I mean, I did actually ask her if there was anything I could do, so that's why she recommended it. I'm not sure if she would have just told me to go ahead and do this otherwise, but she recommended that I try acupuncture. And I'd never tried acupuncture before, but she said that there have been some studies that show that acupuncture performed to specifically try and turn a baby has shown some successful results. So that I have nothing to lose, I might as well give that a try. So I went ahead right away and booked that appointment. Well, after that, I went ahead and went home and did all kinds of research on the internet to figure out how I could go about trying to turn the baby on my own naturally. One of the things that I read about course, is the Spinning Babies website. So that website basically has a bunch of different positions that you can try to get into in order to help the baby to turn on its own. A lot of those positions involve doing inversions. So basically different ways of going upside down to some degree, either just elevating your legs a little bit, elevating your hips a little bit, putting your head kind of lower than your hips. And I tried all of them. The only thing I didn't actually try was standing on my head. I read some, I don't think it was mentioned on Spinning Babies, but I read a lot of message boards where people said to get into a swimming pool and go upside down. I didn't try that. A lot of people have said that they've tried these different positions, and in some cases they did work. So I guess it is possible. I think it also depends on the size of your uterus, the size of the amniotic sac that the baby is in, how much fluid there is. So basically the amount of room that the baby has to move. As I'm going to go on to explain, I had a really low amniotic fluid level, so I think that eliminated any possibility that the baby could have moved on its own just from doing those positions. So those definitely did not work for me. So now I'm going to go ahead and talk about my acupuncture experience. So within the time I met the doctor and scheduled the ECV procedure, I think there was only 2 or 3 days. So I was able to book one acupuncture appointment. I went in and she performed the acupuncture procedure on me, which is basically inserting needles in a bunch of different places, and I basically had to just kind of lie there and relax. She also did something called moxibustion, which involves lighting this moxa stick. It's like this black charcoal looking stick while I was in the room with the needles positioned to help stimulate the baby in order to try and turn it on its own. She lit one end of it and it just kind of had some smoke or fumes or something that, you know, kind of came off the end of it. And she kind of waved it around my foot, and that's it. I basically just lay there. She then gave me that moxa stick to bring home with me, and she recommended I try and do that procedure as often as I could up until the ECV appointment, and that if I didn't feel that the baby turned on their own, to go ahead and book another appointment with her for acupuncture in a week's time. I brought home the moxa stick, and my husband and I tried to do the procedure that evening. So we tried to do that in the evening. We then tried to do it again the next morning, which was the day that I was going to have the ECV procedure performed. I never really felt that the baby had shifted as a result of doing those procedures. So that didn't really work. I then went in for my ECV procedure, so I guess I'll talk about that next. Okay, so for the ECV procedure, I went into the hospital. They took me into a room where there was an ultrasound technician and the ultrasound equipment, of course. So the ultrasound technician confirmed that the baby was still in a breech position. At that point, a junior OB came into the room and introduced himself, and right away I asked about how many times he had performed an ECV and the success rate at the ECV. He told me that he had performed this procedure around 20 times, and then he said that the senior OB that I would be meeting shortly had performed the procedure over 200 times. He told me that the success rate was not high, it was around 25%, which was surprising to me because if you go online and you actually Google the ECV procedure, I think the success rate that they mention is something like 50 to 60%. So I actually went into the appointment super hopeful that this was going to work because it felt like a 50-50 chance, or even like better chance, like 60-40. So the odds were that I was going to have a successful outcome. So I was a little disappointed when he told me that the success rate was only around 25%. And I don't know if that's 25% at the hospital or 25% that he's actually participated in. I'm not sure, but those were the odds he told me. So I was a little discouraged, but still hopeful. I still felt, okay, well, hopefully I can be one of those 25%. So at that point, the senior OB came in and introduced himself. They then asked the ultrasound technician again to check me, and they wanted to see some of the results. And apparently there are pockets of fluid that they look for when they do an ultrasound, and she was only able to find one pocket of fluid, and it measured a very low level. And so they right away said that they were concerned about that, and that put me at a higher risk for doing this ECV procedure. But they said that if I did want to go ahead and have them try the ECV, they would do it as gently as they could to not create any sort of emergency situation. But they also mentioned that I had to be prepared in case there was an emergency situation during doing this procedure. I might need to have an emergency C-section. So basically when I heard that, I felt like I understood that there were some complications of me having low fluid level, and that made the procedure, I guess, less likely to work and slightly more dangerous. But I also felt like, well, I was in a room with two OBs who are specialists. This is what they do for a living. I'm sure they perform many C-sections, so it's not like I was not near help. They were probably the ones who would perform a C-section if I needed it. And so I was willing to go ahead and try out the procedure. They told me right away that if I wanted them to stop trying to rotate the baby at any point because I was in too much pain, that they would go ahead and stop right away. I did not have to go ahead and have the procedure completed. That mostly just made me more nervous, but I still wanted to go ahead and try it. I was determined to give it a try. I felt like I would regret it if I didn't just let them try to turn the baby. We had our bags prepared. We were ready in case I had to have an emergency C-section. So they went ahead and performed the procedure. Basically what happened was one OB put his hands up at the top of the baby. The other OB put his hands at the bottom of the baby. So one was, I guess, holding on to the head. The other one was kind of holding onto the legs. The ultrasound technician had the ultrasound monitor somewhere in the middle to monitor the position, and then they gently started to rotate the baby. And they were kind of speaking to each other, saying, okay, I'm going to turn a little bit this way, and then we're going to stop. So basically, I think what they try and do is rotate the baby to a halfway point and then complete the rotation, just because they need to reposition their hands. So they went ahead and did that. Mostly, I had told myself in advance that I was just going to focus on breathing in a way to relax all the muscles that could possibly be involved in having the baby rotate. So I wanted to try and get everything as relaxed as possible so that there was no resistance from my body on my part. I didn't want to have, out of nervousness, be contracting my back or be contracting my stomach or just be doing anything to kind of tense up. So I focused just on breathing and on relaxing everything. So I just did that. Obviously I was a little bit nervous about potentially feeling pain, but I told myself, don't worry about the pain. So this was my second baby. So for almost all of my first labor and delivery, I was unmedicated, so I did experience a lot of pain. And so the entire time that they were performing the ECV, I had in the back of my mind, I was just telling myself that no matter what, it is not going to be worse than that. And if it is, I can handle it because I've handled pain before, and it's worth it to just have them try to do this procedure. So I was trying to tell myself that. I was focusing on breathing and relaxing everything. So they performed the procedure. They rotated the baby to the halfway point, and then they asked me, how's everything going? Are you feeling okay? And I said, yes, I'm fine. And I just kept focusing on breathing. They then continued to rotate the baby the remainder of the way, and then that was it. Right away, the senior OB said to me, that's it, she's turned, she is now in the head down position. The ECV was successful. And so I was so relieved. It was such a great feeling. The procedure itself actually did not hurt me at all. It did feel like pressure. So where the senior OB was holding the baby, I did not feel anything at all. It was completely undetectable. Where the junior OB was holding the baby is where I could feel the pressure. And I think that, so a big part of how much pain you might potentially feel or how much discomfort you might potentially feel during the procedure is directly related to the skill level of the person performing the procedure. And I definitely felt no discomfort with what the senior OB was doing, and I felt more discomfort with what the junior OB was doing, but it was still completely bearable. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate it maybe a 2 of a discomfort level. versus when I was in labor, which I would rate at around an 8, maybe even a 9. So this was a 2. So it was really nothing, really at all. It was over so quickly. The entire procedure took 2 minutes or less, and that's it. She was turned. They kept the monitor on me for about an hour to make sure that there was nothing that went wrong, because even though the baby was turned, there's still a lot of other stuff going on in there with the placenta and the umbilical cord and the fluid level that was still low and all kinds of, everything that's in there. There's still the potential for something to go wrong. So they monitored me for another hour. The senior OB told me that because of my low fluid level, he highly recommended that I be induced the next day. So that's kind of a separate topic, but I did end up going in the next day to be induced. So after the procedure was complete and completed successfully, everyone was congratulating me. The nurse told me this was the first successful ECV she had ever seen. She had seen a lot of them, but they were always unsuccessful. All the staff who were working at the desk, other nurses who were around, were all congratulating me, telling me that I was really lucky, that it was great, that it worked. So I get the feeling that although the internet says that there's a 50 to 60% success rate, it might not be the case at the hospital that you go to. So I was really, really lucky, and I would highly recommend it. It was not painful. Even if it had been painful to me, it would have been worth it. I hope that this information was helpful. Thanks for watching.